Okay, now I need to make sure, and this is very important, and you can get quite mixed up if you don't check this. You've got to make sure that the track you want is really highlighted. So Violin I is highlighted, that's where we're going to start. Once I press this record button, I'm going to just give a tiny bit extra time just so that any subsequent starting is not feeling rushed when they have to join me. And when I finish that phrase, I'm actually going to let the recording run for a little while, because when I do click it off, that click will show up in the track, and I want to be able to slide the track over so that click's not there anymore. Okay, here we go. This is Violin I for the first phrase of the terzetto. And you noticed how I waited that little extra bit. Now, I'm going to demonstrate this a couple times, then I'll stop demonstrating it, but this is very important for you to get this idea. Now, as always is the case, save. Save your work right away. So I'm going to save it. Now, I haven't given this a name yet. In my case, I kind of like to use names that show exactly what the date is. So I'm going to say 2020 04 12, and I'm going to do checkerboard chamber music Dvorak, and I might use the name, so in this case I'll do Nick, and Nick. And I should say that's the second movement. So let's clarify all that here. Terzetto and 2 Roman numeral 2, Nick. And then this is very important. I'm going to put 1, and this is going to allow me and my colleagues to keep track of which is which. So it's going into the Garageband folder. There we go, it's got its name. Now this is very important. I've got to quit Garageband because the computer can get rather confused about this, and we don't want that to happen. So now I'm going to go into my Finder here, and I'm going to go to Garageband, and there's our folder. And there's our project. Now, if I just sent this, what would actually happen when it gets sent is you would discover that it's actually a bunch of folders that are nestled together. So to avoid that confusion, I'm going to select it, and I'm going to go up to the File menu, and if you go down here a little bit, it's going to allow me to compress it. So I'm going to say compress, and it very quickly made a zip file. Now let's just see how big that. Right now it's not very big at all. Later this is going to get a little more complicated, but especially since it's not too big, I think I'll just go over to the email. I will do this. Now I'm going to send it to myself at the Heifetz account, and this will be Dvorak 1. And I'm going to attach the file. I'm going to attach that zip file. And that's the zip file. Okay, now I'm going to send it, which of course this is going to be a little funny because I'll be receiving it on the same computer, but that's fine. Now that just might take a minute for it to do its uploading and whatnot. And yes, that's right, it's sending the message. We can see that down here, that it's 4.1 megabytes. Now, later on when the file gets bigger, my own habit is to use something called Hightail, but there are many ways to exchange files. DropBox is one that people use a lot. Google Drive. At the Heifetz Institute, we'll be helping you with that. We haven't decided exactly how that's going to happen, but it will be happening in one of those, by one of those methods that we'll try to make as easy as possible. So I've just sent the first violin part. I've compressed that file. I've sent it in the email. And now I'm in a position, I'm now the violist. I've got my viola vest on. And I'm going to receive that email. So it happens in my case that it'll go to the desktop when I do this. But I'm just going to do save. I'm going to use the control button and click on that zip file. And I'm going to do save to downloads folder. And on my computer it goes to the desktop. Other computers may do something different. But there it is on the desktop. And I am now going to uncompress it by double clicking it. So right next to it I have the file that I'm going to open. So now I'm going to double click this and it should open in Garageband. And you will see, there it is, just like we left it, with everything there that was there when we recorded the first violin part. And here we go. I'm going to now select Viola A. This is very, very important to keep track of the file that you are selecting. Really double check it, because you can easily overwrite something. Remember that if you've made a mistake, just undo what you did and you're back where you started. Undo, by the way, is in the edit menu, and it's the top thing that says undo. It's also Apple Z. So I've got the viola track selected. That's my number 2 track, and here we go. I'm going to press record. I will be hearing the first violin part in my ear. I'll also be hearing a little bit of my new playing in the ear, and I'm going to mix those together. I wait a little extra so that I can get rid of that click eventually. And now I've got to save this and send it to our second violinist. Let's say you really felt, oh gee, I messed that up. One of the things you can do is use that Command Z and it'll just go away. Now let's say I did that by accident. If I redo that, it'll just come back. So that was an accident. But if I really wanted to redo it, I might eliminate it like that. And then I would go back to the beginning and I would record it again. I can also just press record and it'll record over it. Now, let's say I really liked it and I thought, well, I'm not sure if I'll do better. I can just slide it here where it's safe, and then I can just start my track again, which I won't really carry this through, but I'll just show you what I mean. So I've got that old one safe over there, and then I start again. And, you know, I could try this many times to just try to get the best result possible. Now, in this case, I was happy with the first one. I think it's pretty good. So I'm going to eliminate this one I just made and move this back over. And that's very easy to do right now because this is the first track. So now I've got to save this. And now what I actually want to do, I saved it with the same name, but I'm going to save it with a new name so it's very clear that we have now progressed in our numbers. So this is going to be 2. And since this was on the desktop, it also went to the desktop, and that's okay. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to quit GarageBand because that gets things a little confused. Now you see I've got my new file there. Now I'm going to press Control, click it, and I'm going to compress it. Now I've got that zip file. Now I'm going to head back over to my email, and I'm going to write an email to nkitchen. And I'm going to say Dvorak 2. And then I'm going to attach that. And right now we're still in the area where it is no problem to email these. You notice that the file, very logically, has become exactly twice as big as it was last time. Now I'm going to send that. And I can maybe text my colleague that, well, it's on the way. Get ready to do your next track. Now I need to receive that email. So let's see how, there we go. Dvorak II has showed up. And now we've got Dvorak II. I'm going to do the same thing. Click it and say save to downloads, which in my computer puts it on the desktop, which is fine. And there we go. Took a second for that to download. Now I'm going to unzip that. And now I'm going to open that into Garageband by double-clicking it. And there we go. We've got those two tracks exactly like we planned. Now I've got to activate Violin II. And get my violin ready. Got my score. I've got to back up the cursor here to where it's at the beginning. And double check that I've got the right track selected. And here we go. Now I'm going to hear two parts in my headphone, and I'll hear a little bit of my own playing, and I'll mix those all together in the way I'm hearing. Now, what I'll say to you here is that it may be the first time you try this, you're going to feel a little scared of being together. So you may end up just sort of concentrating on just trying to be at the same time. What I would say is really interesting about this is as you listen more and more carefully, what you'll find is you can get more confident and actually be going for those musical gestures that you really want to come out. And even if you said to each other, you know, you realized after you did that first exchange, wow, guys, we really, that just wasn't inflected enough or it didn't do enough dynamic, then you can just do this cycle again. You can do this phrase again. You can even leave the same one that you've got in case that turned out better. But probably you're just going to replace it and do a new version of it. But now we've done the first phrase, and it's time to move on to the second phrase. Now, it turns out I'm in Violin II mode, and so we'll be continuing to make the second phrase, but I'm going to use Violin II so that I can really keep track of where these phrases are and feel the connection as it goes seamlessly. So I've just activated Violin II. I'm going to get my violin here. And now I'm going to put the timeline or the cursor back during what was being played. And of course I'm going to be quiet before I come in with a new phrase. But this way in my headphones I'll hear what's coming up to that point and then I'll just start seamlessly with the next phrase. So I back it up a little bit. I've activated Violin II, and here we go. I'm pretty happy with that. So now the next person I send it to is going to be the violist. Now, I would go through the same procedure, obviously, every single time. Right now, because I want to show you a little more rapidly how it all comes together, I'm just going to go ahead and do the viola part right away. And now, here we go. I'll go back to the same starting point that I used for Violin II, or very similar. Get my viola here. Now again, I'm going to hear that Violin II that I just recorded, or that my colleague would have just recorded and sent to me, and I would have downloaded it, the compressed file, and opened it in Garageband, and then here I record. Now, one of those notes I missed a little bit, so I'm not going to do that right this minute, but I would probably do that, and I might end up having to do it 2 or 3 times. I would bring the cursor back to that starting point, still activating the same track, and probably just, in this case, because it was really a wrong note, I would just record right over it. Now in the fourth section of this piece, this movement, there's a moment where everything slows down, and then there's a sudden forte. And really, especially because it slows down right before it, the whole idea for the audience is it feels very unpredictable where that downbeat is going to be. And in fact, if you're doing it in this form, it really will be very unpredictable where that downbeat is going to be. So what I'd suggest at that point, and there'll be certain junctures like this where you decide, okay, we have to have a fresh start there. And in this case, because it's so sudden and so synchronized, what I would suggest you do is include, with the first person that records, which in this case is going to be the first violin, we're going to include a count-in. So when I do this track, I'm going to activate, in this case I'm up to Violin I B, and I need to get my headphones on. Now remember, this is the half headphone so that I hear a little bit of everything. And then I'm going to get ready. I'm going to hear the end just so I'm in the right sort of thing, and then I'm going to consciously wait. I'm going to count in, and then I'm going to start. And then eventually we will remove that count and slide everything over to be in just the right place.